Hello, everyone. I know I've been gone for a while. I've returned because I find that these videos have been extremely therapeutic for me in the process. And in the process of also living and relocating, as many of you may know, to the suburbs. As someone that was born and raised in New York City, in an area or place that I feel was not only very or heavily populated with communities of color, but also a lot of immigrant communities. So, which naturally, those two can exist within one another. But I just find that now living and being in an area where it very much so seems conservative, and not only that, lacking some form of diversity, especially in the town that I'm in, or being predominantly white. Let's just keep it real. Naturally, I do border a town or an area that is a lot more diverse, but it's interesting to notice how different the culture of these locations are and how they truly affect uh, or I would say affect everyone as a whole. I find that in New York City, most individuals that flock to places of such nature, like more urban areas, um, tend to be more progressive and tend to lean liberal. And with that being said, although it's interesting because I've come across um, racism or colorism, whatever and however you may interpret that. I feel like to some degree prejudicism or prejudice is prejudicism even a term, but I have experienced unfortunate circumstances even in New York City, right? So I can't say, oh wow, it's perfect. I find that nowhere or anywhere will be perfect, but I do feel like it's definitely taken a toll on me to live in a place like this, and naturally it has to do with a lot of the circumstances of nowadays that uh, have me here because I'm going to be going into a sector in which I find that this provides me the flexibility, and by that meaning academia, higher academia, that would not necessarily have me stressing out, and hopefully have and open that door to that into that route. I find that in New York City, um, there are much less programs, and I don't know if I want to go into detail about everything in my life because as I mentioned, I don't really, I'm not really on social media like that. I'm not a fan of social media, and although I'm sharing this and I'm sharing my life and I'm sharing certain experiences of my life, I find that it's only a portion. Naturally, that can change with time as to whether I want to share more. But at this very moment in time, I just feel comfortable doing that. And I don't know, I've never been one to want to, focus or hone in on social media or social media alone. Like in this case, I can only speak on YouTube. Um, just because I do have my own career ambitions, and I do have like I really have always had a love for learning, and that's something I've invested a lot of time and energy into. And I find that with doing YouTube, if I do want to create or attract more audience, which I don't know how I feel about that. I was actually listening to a YouTuber yesterday, and she was like, "I don't know how I feel about my audience growing and all of that stuff." It can be scary, right? It can be intimidating. I feel like already going online and being online, it is intimidating, and it makes me feel quite nervous. I'm gonna keep it real. So I yeah, I don't know if I can see myself ever getting fully comfortable. But I did want to share something that interestingly enough happened today, and I feel like this has been an ongoing or reoccurring thing that's always existed, and I may want to, I'm going to go ahead and share it because I find that maybe a lot of people out there experience something similar. And I find that a lot of POCs, when all is said and done, in the back of our heads, just because there's such a heavy emphasis, and naturally knowing that the US and most of, like, it's interesting, and I don't want to derail, but it's this has been on my mind for a while, and I've been wanting to share this, and I'm just like, it's it's like, okay, let me tell y'all, or let me let y'all in to my thoughts. It's interesting that as we know, the USA is going through an interesting time, especially with our current president, and um, naturally it's frustrated much of the world. And it's interesting because it's frustrated as well as it's frustrated the Western world, or should I say European world, because I find that, I mean, those go hand in hand. And it's further interesting how these European countries have criticized the U.S. on a lot of what it's doing, right? Especially Trump. And no, I'm not siding with Trump whatsoever. So hear me out, because I think that that guy is not equipped, or he's not someone that I find that is suitable for the role. Period. And you know, this is my biased opinion, but I find that the only president um, that was as well trained and in just every facet has been Obama. Let's keep it real in terms of education, how he presented himself. That's just my opinion. Hey, you know, to each their own, but let's keep it real. The standard was extremely high, and that's a thing that we always see with communities of color. And hopefully I can tackle that in the near future, because I experienced that in the military when I did do boot camp there, and I had such a horrific experience, but I also observed a lot of things. And I find that, you know, me and my experiences in life, it has been just navigating this world, observing a lot of things that have allowed me to conclude such. And, you know, it has not only, I feel like it's not something that I've only observed within my own life. It's a lot of things I've observed in terms of the differences that I've noted when it concerns treatment of individuals when I'm with friends. And naturally, as someone that was born and raised in New York City, exposed to essentially the world, I've had friends for just all walks of life and all of that, and I just have seen the difference. So naturally, a lot of what I have come to understand and realize as being, well, subconsciously, there's a lot of bias. There's a lot of differences in how people perceived people, whether that be race, religion, things. And we have to, and that's why I created this platform. It's just like, people have to be more aware of that. And people have to, I know that, you know, individuals that are privileged, a lot of times, you know, white people will deny left and right that those things don't exist. Funny enough, although I'm going on like tangents left and right, I knew someone that was white privileged naturally, and it's interesting because he was all about Trump and all that stuff, and furthermore, I remember him specifically saying, which is a clear example of what and the type of people that exist, him saying, "Oh, there isn't no racism." And I was like, sure, whatever. I'm like, there is most definitely racism, or there is most definitely a lot of inequality in general. And I don't know, if I don't recall, because this was such a long time ago, but I remember, I don't know if I provided examples, but I was like, no, there definitely is, and whatnot. He was like, yeah, there is. And then I was like, there we go. Like, you know, it's interesting because a lot of people will, you know, a lot of people that are privileged will always deny, but it's just like, let's take a moment to also realize your own privilege. The fact that you don't believe there is racism already tells me enough. You know, it's something that you haven't encountered personally, and you have no experience. So therefore, you have no room to really speak on those things. And that's just a reality of it. It's like going through life, having a specific experience, and then denying that that experience doesn't exist for others, when it's just like, well, you aren't X, Y, and Z, right? So that isn't your experience, and therefore you can't speak from that experience because you've never experienced that. So with that being said, I know that I was going, you know, I was heading a specific direction, but I guess this is more of like a, let me just share my thoughts and feelings. But yeah, I think I was heading towards how I've observed certain things throughout my life in terms of treatment. And I guess I'm going to speak from an experience that I had today. So I went to my soon-to-be workplace to do like onboarding, especially for physical and whatnot. And the lady that was assisting me was a white woman. Off the get-go, she was like, "Oh, you should have filled out X, Y, and Z form." I was like, "Okay, this is I, it's interesting because I'm someone that's coming from New York City, so maybe the ways that things are done in New York City vary significantly. Normally, I go into an appointment, and despite the fact that I filled out a form or two, I will still be provided forms as a new patient. So I was just like, and furthermore, I didn't even get any notifications, so I was just confused. I was like, well, I mean, if I need to fill out anything, wouldn't I be doing that? So perhaps there was, I'll give it that. But it was further interesting how she proceeded to then, gossip, like, talk under her breath and say, oh, there's a new onboarding and whatever. She didn't fill out the forms. And, I returned to her because I was like, well, this is not working or allowing me to log in. And then she went on to, and then during that time, I was like, well, I didn't receive any, email or anything prompting me to fill out the whatever forms that I needed to, right? So she was gossiping, which is interesting because I've noticed that a lot here in the suburbs. I noticed that also living in suburban areas previously, that there's always a lot of gossip. I'm not sure if it's because I can hear them more but it's just like, I don't know, it just leads me to ask, do people have a life in the suburbs? Like, let's be honest now. Do you have a life in the suburbs? I find that I've always found it ridiculous first and foremost, we're in a professional setting. Why are people, displaying such, poor behavior? Like, where's the professionalism? Where is, there's even like videos and all of the things that require onboarding that train you how to better serve, right? To demonstrate customer service skills. It's just ridiculous that there's such a lack of professionalism when it concerns like areas, and this is why you know what, I think this is why this is my naturally I've observed this and I've said this the whole time. I find that this is probably why a lot of people say, oh, New Yorkers are rude, but they feel like they keep it real. They're truly like helpful. They're truly kind in nature, because it's just like, although, we're going about our day, we're doing our own thing, minding our own business. Yes, minding our own business. But when all is said and done, like, I feel like we just keep it real. And I was telling my partner about that because he was born and raised in these neck of the woods. And it's just like, it's so discouraging. And I don't even know how to feel. Sometimes I wonder if it, and naturally I'll bring in like worst case scenario. Oh, they're being also discriminatory in a way, or they're basing it off my appearance. And naturally, this is like, someone might be like, well, that might not be true. And that might not be true. But in all honesty, I would not doubt it. I would definitely not doubt it. And yeah, so I guess moving on to like how that continued. So then she went on to say like, oh, your ID expired. Interestingly enough, I just ordered it. So I had an email which provided like just verification that I had an email. She's like, oh, no, we need a photo ID, which I was just like, well, I have my passport. Interestingly enough, once again, her whole tone changed once she saw my passport, or she saw that I, so yeah, it's something else, to have, and this is just something that I've, once again, observations are life. It's interesting how in the U.S., I don't want to lose the point of Europe. I need to return to that point. But it's interesting how individuals that are from, naturally, these are descendants of colonizers. Let's keep it real. but the white community um, has provided the opportunity for other communities of color. Mind you, Native Americans are or fall under that category of being communities of color, made everyone else feel like they're foreigners in their own land. Crazy, right? Crazy. And it's like communities of color allow that, or provide the opportunity for that to exist, because we pander to whatever rhetoric they put out, right? Oh, if if you're patriotic, you're going to be accepted. If you speak perfect English, you're going to be accepted. If you are a believer in, Christ, you're going to be accepted. Like, everything you have to conform. If you live in a house with a white picket fence, if you're married, if you're straight, if you're this, if you're that, like, they've, like, this country and this society, and I feel like this world and the Western world has made way for people that don't maybe want that life, that don't care for that life, to feel like they don't belong. Mind you, we're talking about people that are not even originally from these lands, that brought their religion. And naturally, I'm not saying that Christianity is, because interestingly enough, once again, they stole something that is not even theirs, right? Christianity is a essentially Middle Eastern religion. It started in the Middle East, and they managed to steal this religion and now claim it's theirs, which is interesting because a lot of people, or the greater world, sometimes, like, this is what I see online, a lot of like, oh, Christianity is the white man's religion. But I'll say this much: it actually isn't. It technically isn't. So I find that they've managed to steal everything, and make everyone feel like they need to earn. And this is why, for me, I've never, and I will never, ever pander to Western rhetoric. I will never, ever succumb to Western rhetoric. I find that, at some point or time, I was like, oh yeah, military service, oh yeah, patriotism, all this stuff. But once I opened up my eyes to realize, shit, what are these wars for? What are these wars truly for? They're for, like, a rich white man that doesn't give two shits about me and doesn't give two shits about communities of color. But let's keep it real. He does not give a shit about the poor white people either. Let's keep it real. So it's crazy that we've allowed for ourselves to be sold this idea of America being something it's really not. And I'm going to go further. It's crazy that we've allowed for this idea that the Western world is this thing that is not. It is freedom. It is quality. It is progress. No, it is not, because that doesn't apply to everyone. It only applies to select individuals. It's funny, I guess I'm circling completely back to the point where it's just like Europeans claiming that they are better than thou when it concerns, like, the current situation of America is quite comical, given the fact that we have the people we have nowadays. In other words, we have the colonizers that have taken over this region, this land, and claimed it theirs. They're descendants of Europe. Yes, Europe. And not to add, Europe has colonized much of the world as well. So, yes, no. In terms of trying to make it seem like y'all more ethical, or y'all are doing it right. No. No. Oof. And I'm going to say this much at the end while I end this video. I hope that, and I pray, most importantly, that those that have been suffering for a long time, meaning communities of color, and naturally we can talk about Palestine, Sudan, Haiti, the Congo. I understand there's a lot of issues that are existing throughout the entire world, that are often not mentioned and often overlooked. And it's sad, you know, in regards to Palestine, and I guess I'll dive into that very quickly because it's something I don't normally talk about very much, or it's very difficult. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to talk about a lot of things because there's a lot of issues that exist, and there's a lot of issues that exist when it concerns communities of color that really sadden me, that really caused me to feel conflicted about how I can have sometimes empathy, for all, communities, especially of color. Like, and I know this is going to sound bizarre or interesting. And the reason being is that I find that a lot of communities of color, a lot of places around the globe, and not saying that I do not have empathy whatsoever. No, I have so much empathy for all communities of color. But what I'm getting at is that it's sad to see the state of places that are predominantly made of Black and brown communities be so divided and often be so hateful towards one another. And most importantly, and I've covered this in the past, a lot of demonstration of anti-Blackness. And it's insane because when we really think about the US and a lot of countries within Europe and the Western world, I can genuinely say that the reason why we have the opportunities that we have as individuals that are not Black but are of the brown communities or communities that are often oppressed and not also not viewed often very kindly is because of the Black community. They've essentially paved the way. They've vocalized a lot of the injustices they've experienced. They've put that out there, right? And it's sad for me to see other communities of color, like other places. Like I've experienced racism in a lot of, I would say, predominantly brown like places where naturally there's individuals that look like myself. I find that I've experienced racism and colorism, and it's interesting because, or it's more or less crazy because it's just like we look so similar, we look the same, but because you're still so I would say in a state of and I don't know, shackled perhaps by like colonization, like still in the state of worshiping the white man or women. We don't realize how detrimental that is, not only to other individuals that look like you and for yourself, but also for our black and brown brothers and sisters. And I'm going to bring that together. And that's why I don't vocalize often a lot of the injustices that exist within certain countries, because it's just like I want our communities to really come together and show support, show solidarity to the Black community, because honestly, we wouldn't be where we are. We wouldn't have the opportunities that we do if it weren't for the Black community paving the way. And not to discredit any other community, but I feel because in this case, and I can only speak more or less on the reality of the America, since the Black community has been here for such a long time, and has, I would say, has had such a powerful voice and has probably united itself a lot more powerfully, that they've been able to mobilize other communities and really allow us to even come into these benefits, like the opportunities that we have. So that leads me to say, I truly, truly want to see, and I urge people to really, you know, look within to, and to look within all biases, because it's so sad. I myself come from a Latin American background. It's sad to see how, and naturally, this is all probably lack of education, ignorance, a lot of things, and this can be attributed to all communities, including white. The ignorance, the lack of education, the unwillingness to realize that labeling people or identifying people as certain things, like these stereotypes, pandering to these stereotypes, pandering to certain labels, and thinking it's okay to say those things without being mindful of what is being said, and then not expecting for someone to then label you as something that you might not also deem kind or mindful. Is ludicrous, to say the least. Like, why are we stereotyping? Why are we talking negatively? Or why are we saying X, Y, and Z race is a certain country? Like the associations of certain racial groups with a specific country, as if that's the only country that exists within Latin America or East Asia. It's just mind-boggling to me. And it's like, we have to be more well-informed, more educated regarding these issues, and also dismantling the amount of colonization that exists within. So, I wanted to say that before I say my thoughts about, naturally, and my support for the Palestinian community, in which I stand in solidarity, and all of the communities that exist. We have to be united, especially as communities of color, to dismantle colonization and eradicate it fully. If we continue to pander to these ideas and beliefs, these beauty standards that are created by a group and community that look nothing like you and could care less to nothing about you. Not to say that beauty should be what we pursue, but hopefully knowledge. But it's crazy that we allow for ourselves to try to continue to put down other communities of colors, or our brothers and sisters, to leverage and elevate a community that is not us, that will never be us, never want to be us, first and foremost. And we should never want to be them, because we should know our self-worth, we should know our identity, and we should be proud of that. The fact that we have rich culture, the fact that we're ageless individuals in many ways. Our skin has allowed us to be protected and to allowed us to be resilient through time. So why would you not, feel pride about all of these benefits that, if you believe in a divine one or not, that, the universe or the one above has allowed you to even come into, or whatever it may be, right? You are just blessed to come into naturally. So look and realize the many benefits and amazing things that you hold. And don't let, I'm saying I'm going to get into this, this my thoughts on the Palestinian thing. I feel like I'm covering so many things all at once, but I feel like this is my heart, and these are things that I've always had in my mind and within me. And I've always been like, sometimes I feel so nervous, and you guys might be able to see that in a lot of my previous videos, but I don't know, today I have like the strength and energy. Perhaps it's because I've been challenging my brain a lot more with doing, a lot of studying as of now. And maybe I'll share that portion. I don't know. I feel like this YouTube channel alone, I feel more, inclined to focus on what I'm talking about and the things that I've mentioned, with social issues and whatnot. But what was I gonna say? Because I feel like I lose my train of thought so often. Well, I was gonna say something, and I totally forgot. But yeah, I just want to, yeah, I just want to make sure that you know that you are appreciated, and you are, I think I just got it, that you are appreciated, that you are wonderful, that you are loved, that you are one of a kind. For my brothers and sisters of color and probably navigating this world, it's crazy. We have so many issues that exist and so much opposition when all is said and done. And although some might not believe in Jesus Christ, and I also have my questions about what I grew up believing, but I can say that when all is said and done, Jesus was a leader and he had experiences, and it very much reminds me of like the experiences that Jesus had, right? A lot of opposition, everyone was against him. So just know that great leaders, great people in this world that made impact, that have made change, like Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, the list goes on. So many individuals, and Jesus as well, have had so much opposition throughout their lives. But it's crazy because I feel like with challenge, with struggle, with opposition, with all these negative things, comes a resiliency that is unlike any other. And if anything in this world were to happen, that we would stand strong and we would be able to rise above those challenges. So just know that despite it being and seeming so unfair, there is a silver lining, right? There's a silver lining that we not only get to share. If you are listening and you feel and you hear me out and you understand what it's been like, just know that there's a lot more people in this world that are just like you and I, and that feel the same, and that just makes me feel a lot more encouraged, and knowing that also so many individuals were able to do so much in this life. So that also leads me to say, be productive, be the greatest version of yourself. Just because there's a lot of things that are going to be against you, don't let that stop you from getting to where you rightfully deserve. And that, I'm bringing that, I'm putting that out into existence, that you would be, you will get far in life. I'm going to declare that, right? That's important. And, same for all of us, for our brothers and sisters. So, with that being said, there will be a lot of challenges, and that's something that I've most definitely encountered, and I want to tackle that as well when I talk more about the military, because I noticed all the isms in there, and in this world where they say fight for justice or equality, when there is none, when all is said and done, right? And that has been an issue from the very beginning of America, right, or the U.S. And I think that's been a thing that even exists, although not only does this country, but many countries proclaim they're progressive, they're, different than other countries, and knowing that a lot of people still face discrimination, are still treated differently based off skin color, off their religion, it just tells me enough. It tells me that there is no true progress, and that there is no difference when all is said and done to those countries that they compare themselves to. The problems might be different or similar, but there are still problems, and there are still inequalities that exist, and therefore it hasn't reached its truest potential. So it's interesting, and I guess that also leads me to say it's interesting that the West has always been a place that talks about morality and ethicality, when I find the opposite to be true, when they're essentially oppressing other countries. And well, let's keep it real, they bully other countries in order to side with them and side for their uh, causes that are essentially for selfish gain. That being, for example, the Middle East. Uh, what protection? What are we like? Our enemies, fight against our enemies. What enemies? I'm sorry, but a lot of people are just trying to live in those countries. A lot of people are just trying to survive in those countries, just like a lot of people are trying to live here, right? And survive in this country. And it's crazy that there's always this villainization of a certain country, a certain people group, be that China, Russia. Why are we in other people's why are we in other countries' businesses? Sorry, let's be honest. Why are we in other countries' businesses? Let's focus on the problems we have here. How about that one? So it's always been insane to me that the West, just a lot of talking, not enough doing, and not saying that we should help the world. We're not saving the world. We can't possibly save the world, but what we can do as a country and as people is to not meddle in other affairs and cause further instability in other countries. How about that one? And not promote warfare. How about promoting peace if we're all about ethicality and morality? So it's insane to me. But once again, and that leads me to say regarding Palestine, naturally free Palestine. I'll stand with that, because Palestine is mirrors very closely what happened here in the U.S., right? Native land stolen. Not only were natives, it was an attempt to eliminate Native Americans, but eliminate the Black community, eliminate, more than likely in other communities as well. East Asians, Latinos, you name it. Any other community, I feel like, and naturally here I am talking about my experience, talking about the reality of America, talking about, beware, don't really come here. Don't move to the West. I think the best way to approach the this world as a whole is to improve our countries, lift our, and some might say, oh, go back to your country, honey. My parents are from 2 different countries, so which country am I going to? Please let me know. And furthermore, as I've mentioned before in other videos, I do have roots to the Americas as well. Naturally, if you also know about geography, if you know about race, if you know about the indigenous communities, and this is just a more common sense thing, there were different tribes within all of the Americas, and I can only assume that they were, moving back and forth, right? And naturally also intermarriage exists. Tribes mingle with other tribes. Common sense stuff. But okay. Anyways, with that being said, I honestly, and since I've always had an interest in the world, I've, mentioned it to many of my friends. I'm like, I feel like the West is not what it's made up to be. I feel like the best approach, and it's, and this leads me back, although I'm not getting to my point, although I'll end it with the points regarding Palestine and more, that I saw a YouTube video most recently, and I was just so moved by it. I was like, wow, that is such a powerful thing. And it was in regards to this woman. I'm not sure where exactly she lived, where she was born and raised. Like, I assume she was living in the Western world, and she was all about the Black and brown community, or more so the Black community, I would say, because she ended up going to the continent of Africa. I don't know what countries. I think she's been just like going around, and she talks about the beauty of the continent, like all like many countries within Africa, right? Because there's naturally misconceptions about all these countries. Every other country aside from the Western world is essentially, according to certain presidents, shitholes. Just saying. That's that's what. But funny enough, this place and many Western countries are shitholes too. Let's be honest. Communities of color, because there isn't treat equal treatment. So through my lens, I'm like, I don't know about this country being good. I don't, this country, I've seen a lot of evil in this place. There's a lot of issues, and we can go from so many things, not only military, foster care system, immigration. Like, there's so many things that have so many issues. And it's just crazy to say another country is a shithole country when your very country doesn't provide like equal treatment for all. It's not really in the land of the free. It's not really in the land of the free. Basing it off or just judging it off history. It's not really the land of the free, because it's only been free for those of European descent. Yes. So, it's, I find that we have to also dismantle these ideas and beliefs that other countries are not good, are not great. They are great, and often they need sometimes individuals from those very countries to make it greater, to make it the best that they can be. And I guess that leads me to say, I find that, staying in your country, building your country, is the way in which this specific individual that was being interviewed by that YouTuber, in which I was talking about, that she highlights the beauty of the continent of Africa. She had someone say, I believe that when Martin Luther King said, I have a dream, it was that and I don't know if he necessarily said the black community, but I think the black community returning to their, like, essentially the continent of Africa, and really connecting once again with their roots, making the various countries naturally, and that can also, interestingly enough, it's just like, even looking at my racial backgrounds or composition, I'm just like, I wish I can say, like, let me go back to all, like, these numerous countries or places, regions, right? It's just like, there's so many, and it's just like, which one can I invest in? But I guess, like, when all is said and done, I guess I can get tricky, because I'm sure many people have various, but I guess he was emphasizing the continent of Africa as a whole, like lifting up and improving, like, the economy, and making it just what it's always, all of these places around the world that have been and have been at a more or less a standstill, like, a lot of communities, whether that be in our countries, whether that be in Latin America, the Middle East, Africa, which actually the Middle East is within Asia. So, like, all these places often, they're still struggling, but it's just like, all these places have not been given the freedom and opportunity, because I'm sure there's been a lot of Western influence, a lot of Western meddling that has kept these countries from being able to build themselves up. But if we're building these places up ourselves, investing our money, which leads me to also add that I don't see myself, and this is me at this very moment in time, I don't see myself ever going to Europe or going back to Europe. I've been to Europe once, And that was for layover, honestly. It wasn't because I necessarily wanted to go there. I've never been intrigued or attracted to, countries in Europe. Although naturally, the world is like, go to Europe. Europe is so amazing. And it's just like, I'm sorry, but I've always been about the underdogs. Let's keep it real. Let's keep it real now. Like, I want to see the hidden gems. I want to go where people don't want to go. I want to see what people don't care to see, because when all is said and done, there is beauty that people are missing out on, and people are just going to pander, which also leads me to say that I find that people in this world just pander to whatever is said. Like, you sell them an idea naturally when it concerns beauty standards or stereotypes or whatever it may be. You sell them that idea and people are like, yes, that is the truth. That is the truth. Essentially, that is the gospel. And it's just like, oh, please. That is the only reason that is the truth to you is because you have allowed society to make you believe that is true, but you have not been able to take that truth, which is your truth only, apart to realize that it's not necessarily factual, or it's not factual, period. It's not factual, period. It's just based off ideas and beliefs that help to leverage the white community, right? So once we also dismantle that and stop believing like, oh, Europe is the place to go, or we have to treat and be ultra kind to the white community, because at the end of the day, all you care about is gaining something, or being accepted by a community that historically has tried to eliminate people that look like you. But yes, so when all is said and done, I find that I encourage people to think. I encourage people to start taking information, beliefs, ideas apart and think for yourself. Now, finally, the most beautiful part of all, just talking about my fellow brethren around the world, because it's just like, it's crazy that the U.S. and I feel a lot of countries, and naturally this also may correlate to a specific European country, or the continent of Europe in itself, where it's just like been me and my own, right? People that look like me deserve to be, and this is what we see here in the U.S., people that look like me deserve to be treated right. But people that don't look like me, I'm going to question, and I'm going to have my guard up, and I'm going to treat differently, because they don't look like me. They don't deserve respect. They don't deserve kindness. They don't deserve what I get, right? When all is said and done, I like how someone put it in a comment section I read the other day. They were like, when you're trying to remove someone else's freedom, expect your freedom to soon be removed, or be in jeopardy. Just saying, because as we have observed, there's been a rise in putting out content that is about leveraging communities of color. And what is that doing? Our communities of color, God willing, and even if you don't believe in God, hopefully we can come together in the process, and that we can be stronger. And naturally, I've been so enlightened by individuals on YouTube sharing their experience on racism, sharing, sometimes trying to find the humor in the unfortunate, and it gives me so much strength and encouragement, and enhances my resilience to realize, like, if they can do it, I can do it. So just know that if they can do it, I can do it. If my brother and sister can do it, I can do it too. So just know that, these things exist, and we're going to continue to be vocal, and we're going to continue to speak up. And I encourage you, if you've experienced something like this, if you've experienced racism, or if you experienced, poor treatment here in this country, in Europe, feel free to share. Or if you've seen, how even in your own countries, if you're from other places beyond the Western world, where you notice like colorism, racism play a huge role, and how sometimes like they're even making differentiations. They're like these places, you'll notice how in certain spaces or places, and this concerns also tourism, how you're seeing like predominantly white people dining in these nice areas, and then all of a sudden you see your own community struggling. Why is that? Why is that? Where is the equality that Europe and white people love to preach but don't practice? Like, why are, first and foremost, naturally it starts in the government. It starts within the very country itself, of allowing for and greedy people, selfish people, and that is the true reality of those very people that are privileged, that are that have power in this world. That's what they're only gonna be looking at me, myself, and I. They're only gonna be looking at, well, this is beneficial for me, but also for people that look like me, and I don't care at what cost that comes. It's just, kind of like that is not my problem. That's the mentality. It started there. It started in me, myself, and I, and it's not about people. It's not about humanity. It's about themselves, and what they themselves can profit off and benefit from, and what their next generations can benefit from, right? And unfortunately that continues that unfortunate pattern, and that's what we've seen in this country, but also the greater world. And then when all is said and done, because they are reaping all the benefits, that being the white community, the white people reaping all the benefits, then they have more autonomy to experience the good stuff in this world, be able to go to other countries, and while everyone else treated or seen as second-class citizen, they're continuously colonizing the world. They're continuously demonstrating colonizer behavior. It's insane, because I've seen this when I've gone to certain countries in the Arab world, and it's just like, yikes. And when, I guess I'll say this much, because I grew up in the Christian faith. I find that in the Christian faith, much of what we see when proselytizing, and this is why I'm not a fan of proselytizing or trying to sell one's religion. I'm just like, if one wants to come into the religion, if one is convinced on something, then let that be a personal journey. But I'm not about convincing. Why is that? Because I find that is exactly what colonizers did back in the day, and that is what they continue to do through the means of missions. Yes, we're going out there to bring the good word, because we believe that you do not know about anything, and we have to tell you what you should believe. Like, what? This is why this world is just mind-boggling. It's just like trying to diminish, and that's what I feel like I get so enraged and so angry about this being the reality. Like, people question you as a person. Like, I feel like, as someone that has observed and experienced and walked through life and been all about learning and seeing different perspectives and hearing people out from different walks of life, different religions, different racial groups, I've loved, immersing myself in more knowledge. I find that I always feel like I'm being questioned for who I am and what my potential, or like my overall identity, because in all reality, it's just, as it could be the least educated white individual. I find that often they will be like, yes, that person must know it, but mind you, the person of color could be extremely advanced in all aspects of life, and still it will, like, there's still this perception, and I feel like this not only exists within the Western world but exists beyond, right? And it's sad, and that's why I'm saying, like, we need to be cognizant of what we believe and what we are believing, because I find that it will directly impact you as a person of color if you are one. So I it's so sad. And I'm going to wrap this up, and I know it's been a long video, but I'm going to wrap this up by saying that I hope that, communities of color can come together. And I always say this in all my videos. Why? Because I notice so much racism, so much ugliness. And this, naturally, I'm judging off online, but I've also, I've had the pleasure of going to a lot of countries, and as I've mentioned, I don't really go to European countries because I'm not someone that wants to continue to invest in countries, and I didn't give a reasoning, but I guess I'm giving a reasoning now. Invest in propelling colonization. It's just I'm putting my money, my funds in a country, in a region that's already wealthy. And not saying that all countries within Europe are wealthy, but for the most part, people do frequent wealthier areas, right? Well off places that have benefited from colonization, have subjugated Black and brown communities. I'm not going to invest in those countries. I'm going to go and take that money and invest it in communities of color. So, naturally, I also want to urge individuals to be mindful of traveling, of where they go when traveling. Naturally, I'm not policing anyone. No. Do what you want to do, but just something to keep in mind, that I feel like we can only break free of all of these shackles and unfortunate things that exist, and show that we have a voice, we have the power, when we start making more important decisions, or we start moving in a direction that is for our people and lifting our people up. And that is a way in which we could do that, by putting our money in countries and naturally in continents and regions that are comprised primarily of the Black and brown community. So that is this is me just being intentional in regards to that. So with that being said, I want to say that I have seen a lot of anti-Blackness, and I mentioned it. I mention it all the time. It's crazy that other communities, other people groups that also are considered other when in the Western world, are also treated differently, are also looked down on many times, will demonstrate racism, colorism. And even if you are, as I've heard this term, and I liked it, I definitely, I'm like white adjacent. I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep it real. If you're white adjacent, naturally, as someone that's Latina, I have family members that are white adjacent, right? There is privilege in that, and it's sad that even within communities of color, where individuals naturally, I'm going to assume they have a greater amount of like European ancestry on their behalf or their end, and this is just an assumption naturally, but look more in like part of what has existed, let's keep it real, has been how close in proximity are you to me. That's what the West has been all about. That's what colonization has been all about. How close in proximity can you be to me? Religion, race, language, you name it. How can you mirror me? That's why I feel like the white community is often more kind. It's more accepting of certain communities of color, because they're more willing to, in other words, bow down. I mean, like, conform. To me, it's just like, I feel the Black community has been like, nope, nope, I can never conform. I will never fit in that mold. And I've, and it's why, or as people of color, more so the brown community, and also even if you are white adjacent, a lot of times, like for example, individuals from like regions around the world that are often villainized. Uh, if you have and share a different religion, like one of my friends expressed to me how she is a young lady that does look white in at face value, but is Middle Eastern origins. She experienced, or her family experienced racism, having eggs thrown at their home after 9/11. Why are we not siding as individuals, even if you lean towards more whiteness? Why are we not being more mindful of how and what we're doing that affects our own brothers and sisters? Even if they're a shade darker, even if they're a shade lighter, it doesn't matter. Why aren't we coming together? Because clearly we have all been othered. We have all been outcasted. We have all been made to feel like second-class citizens. Why aren't we coming together? And I guess that's what I wanted to say, and why I kind of went off on a tangent when I was diving into coverage on Palestine. And naturally, this is not to say, well, then we, a lot of times, a lot of people have arguments of, well, that person doesn't share my religion, or because I've experienced X, Y, and Z, I'm going to not like have the same empathy. It's just like, those are barriers that are keeping us from unifying or coming together, just because that person might not be of Latin American origins. And I see, there's a lot of solidarity, and that's great, that's wonderful, but I feel like there's a lot of also more acceptance of lighter skin within these communities. They want the lighter, according to many, the lighter the better, right? And it's just like, makes no sense with the fact that when all is said and done, it impacts all of us. It doesn't matter if you're one shade lighter, one shade dark. So stop thinking you're better because you're lighter skin. That's ridiculous to me. Ridiculous. Stop, and once again, stop letting colonization, marinate into your head, and break out of that and see things, realize the reality. How is that affecting? And that could affect your future generations. That's the reality. You never know, and you will never know, who your children and children of children will come together with, what your generations will look like. So you're doing a disservice for your own, your loved ones, technically, in a way. So that leads me to say, I hope that we, as communities of color, be that Latin America, be that Asia, be that the Middle East or the Arab world, be that Africa, be that, those that have had to go to the West, right? That are descendants of immigrants, right? I hope that we can come together and realize that we are all the same, first and foremost, and that we have very similar struggles, and that we need to support one another. We need to stop talking as if we're colonizers, when you most definitely have no proximity or closeness, perhaps in appearance or look. And stop trying to conform. Stop trying to, it. Honestly, I find that a lot of the world is very much of, there's a bully, right? And people are just like, yeah, I need to agree with this because I want to be accepted, because I want to be popular, because I want to be, seen. And it's just like, whatever happened to individuality and being the leader of your own life? Whatever happened to that? And whatever happened to being confident and proud of who you are? I've heard so many things, and interestingly enough, once again, I feel like I say interestingly enough a lot, but I always have examples. I have so many examples throughout my life, and maybe at some point or another I'll share a lot more of these examples in depth in regards to my experiences with racism, colorism, as if they extended beyond the U.S. naturally. But I remember hearing a brother, like a Latino brother, that was melanated like myself, most recently, mind you, at a bakery in New York City. Yeah, that's why I say, like, New York City, I've experienced my fair share of racism, colorism, or downright racism, more than likely. I remember him saying, "White is right," and in my mind, I'm just like, "Honey, you are not white." Let's start there. So, if you're saying white is right, then you're wrong. Then you are not right, I guess, because you are not white. I'm confused. So it's like, let's be mindful of what we say, because it really is just like putting yourself down. It's like, I feel like a lot of the world has truly like a lack of self-confidence and like just like lack of certainty of themselves. Maybe this is the climate of, and naturally this has existed throughout time in the world. I can't say one time, it's crazy. We always see, oh, this time, this period, this decade, this century was so much greater. Sure. Maybe to you, because you're white. There. I answered the question. I mean, well, I solved that mystery. But to be honest, it's just like insane that we don't realize that things have always been problematic, and there's been small progress, and it's taken such a long time. I probably won't see actual progress, and who knows, as they say, history repeats itself. But I feel like people just succumb to whatever rhetoric and ideas placed out there without really taking it apart. It's as if, and this is how I feel as someone just like navigating this world, I find that a lot of people are just, I don't know, to me, when I think about it, it's like robots. It's like people don't dare to question or think for themselves, or so it seems like that to me. And it's just crazy that people, like, in many ways, people are like not individuals, because it's just like people will pander whatever idea is placed out there, and you're, yes, that's right, that is right. It's like, what? Okay, I guess that, I don't know what to say. I don't know. Do you feel like that's been the case for you? It's crazy. I feel like I'm walking and navigating a world that is full of robots. Yeah, it really does feel like it, because it's just like, I don't know. Does anyone else catch on to these things? Like, my gosh, like, like, yes, this is right. This is what is great, what is accepted worldwide. It's like, yeah, that's what they've made you believe is right, but that's what they're selling to you because they just want to maintain their power and maintain their presence and be the face of the world. And how is that benefiting you as a person of color that might not even resemble that person or doesn't resemble that person? I don't know. I do not know. But I guess people are okay with not leading but following. Finally, last but not least, I want to say that in regards to the Palestinian issue, it's insane to me to see a community that has, and this is in regards to Israel in this case, and naturally, not all of Israel is in agreement with what is happening. But it's crazy to me to also see the West. Once again, clear example of lack of ethicality within the West. Lack of ethicality. I don't know who would necessarily be the backbone, but that could be it, because people are, once again, are just willing to go with whatever is established, as long as it benefits them, as long as they get something out of it. Whew. Man, people clearly have no compassion or humanity. That's what I'll say, especially about the West. Naturally, I know there's been a lot of solidarity from the Western world with the Palestinian community. This is a land that they've claimed. It's crazy to me to see colonizers that colonize a certain country, because the argument is often, well, Israel was there prior to. Mind you, the Israel you might be talking about are individuals of Middle Eastern origins, Arab community, which I understand Sephardic community is not even welcomed, is not even viewed equally, or had to fight for some rights in Israel, because they were viewed as second-class citizens, and those of European ancestry were the ones that were getting all the privilege. So let's start there. Let's start with, although Israel and those of that are actually native to those lands, because we all know that, well, they eventually went to Europe. I'm sure that there was like mingling or intermarriages, hence why many ended up or look like, that's, oh, I was gonna say colonized, but you know what, let me not say that, because a lot of like more or less the more conservative Jews are the ones that are with war or don't align with war, are don't stand with it. I believe Orthodox Jews, and naturally there's different similar to like naturally Christianity or Islam, other religions. There's different sects, there's different denominations. So I'm not too well rehearsed on Judaism and what exists within it. But I know that the ones that aren't in alignment have stated their stance on the current situation, and we can all say we can appreciate that because many have not forgotten where they came from, their roots, what their ancestors went through. Their ancestors went through what is happening to Palestinian people. It's insane to me to see a group of people that literally went through the same thing, but not surprising, because I feel like those that experience certain things in life often, in many cases, become the oppressor. So I'm going to say that much, and we're seeing that they're right there with Israel with this current situation. But I guess what I was also getting at is that it's crazy to me that a lot of the Western world, in this case America, but I feel like that's because of interest. So that's the reason for that is just like, oh, we're in solidarity, not only because we believe maybe your faith is more or less acceptable to us, but because, well, you can, monitor the region, make sure that we're getting all those benefits from all that oil that's in that region. We gotta make sure that we have our presence and our presence is known. And, well, we want to make sure that you guys know that we are powerful. So if you don't want to align with us, although we don't share the same religion, we don't really look alike, but because of the fact that you guys have oil, we're hi everyone. Yeah, all is well and dandy for now. Not really, but yeah. So that is what I believe is happening. They're just there because, well, and they're in, they're accord with Israel because, well, what can they profit at the end of the day? But how are you? How is the West, which is this is the contradictory part of it all, is that how is the U.S. Supporting Israel when Israel essentially got those, and that can get tricky as I just explained that well many of those that claim to be from Israel now are of European ancestry. So well anyways, how are we I guess those certain individuals uh, within the Western world, how are they supporting Israel, not Palestine, when when aren't we all about fighting for our lands and making sure that okay? But here's the funny not funny because this is well naturally this is um, it's more of like the crazy part. It's just that whew, uh, they're supporting essentially what Israel claims to be more or less the indigenous people of the land. That is not really the case, but I see their argument. Um, Although that doesn't give them, room to. It's the U.S. is quote unquote supporting indigenous community. Indigenous, not really. I feel like the indigenous people are people that are of Arab ancestry, period, like of Middle Eastern origins, like Sephardic Jews, which, from what I understand, have not been treated equally, and it gets even worse once we talk about those within the African diaspora. Like, from what I understand, that so I feel like Israel is more or less a colonized-ish country, but it's crazy to me that they're not supporting the country that was there prior to the establishment but also you know what, it makes sense. It does make sense in the sense, okay, I'm thinking about it because I was thinking about it in the way of like, well, they say, or the claim is, or the history blah 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 says that, well, Israel was there prior. Well, if we're really looking at it through that lens, then those are the individuals that are also of racially of the region, not a European community. So it's more of that. I feel like that the establishment of Israel was an establishment of those of European ancestry, which align more closely with colonization, or align perfectly with colonization, and therefore it's more like they colonized, and that's why in other words, part of the reason why they get so much Western support, because it's very much in likeness with what the Western world has already done. So my argument of, well, fighting for like my argument was initially, oh, why isn't the U.S. actually supporting Palestine? Because Palestinian people that have been there for a long time, before those of European, the Jews of European ancestry came in and tried to make it theirs, were there. Why isn't the U.S. fighting with? Isn't that what the U.S. is all about? Fighting, protect your lands, protect your place, right? And if this well, Israel was there prior is true, well, wouldn't then that be that Palestine is a colonizer, and therefore shouldn't that garner your support because y'all did the same to the Native Americans? I don't know, but it doesn't make sense because of the fact that, once again, like I said, the Jews that eventually moved and came to live in Israel are of European origin, and that fits perfect the narrative. And well, that's why we also have to look into our minds and realize, like, it seems like the world always has empathy for those of European ancestry. Oh, Ukraine. Yeah, and naturally I do have empathy for Ukraine, and have had the pleasure of, meeting so many amazing, like, honestly, such kind and very and beautiful people and wonderful people. I'm not talking about physicality, but to like what. But here's the thing. What I'm going to say, and this is something I've noticed with the Ukrainian and European communities that have been oppressed too. Many communities that have been oppressed. Why are we not being kind to our black and brown brothers and sisters? How are you, and not saying that all of the community in Ukraine is, but I noticed a lot of news and a lot of things that were coming out there on online, that the poor treatment of our black brothers and sisters. Why are we continuously perpetuating racism, and then we don't expect racism towards us? That's a question I have for all communities, like in terms of communities of color. Like, why are we coming into, or being essentially slaves in a way, like, like subjugating ourselves, like allowing for ideas that are rooted in colonization? Why are we allowing for that to be our reality, our truth? Why are we supporting a community that doesn't support us, that has tried to eliminate our communities historically? And even if you are white adjacent, even if you are of European ancestry, look at the lack of solidarity within. These are individualistic countries. How can you put your trust on individualistic countries? Let's be honest. Collective cultures and countries, we work together. That's the essence of our life. Why are we trying to find solidarity in colonizers or colonization? That's always been about themselves, and it's never been about the greater group, greater people of humanity. So that's one thing I want to say, and that's one thing that I see all the time that just really saddens me. It's like, why are we as communities of color so divided? But also communities that have been oppressed, like, and have been villainized, like, for example, in this case, Ukraine. And I'll go even a step further. There's always been a poor narrative, not only in Russia, China, as we know, always viewing them as enemies, but also in the Middle East. There's a lot of individuals that, and just like Latin America, someone that is of a Latin American origin, we have a lot of individuals that are of European ancestry. Naturally, there are benefits that come with that, but it's just like, why aren't we standing with our communities? If we are so proud to be Middle Eastern or Latin American, or of a specific country, in this case Ukraine, then are we gonna open our eyes to the reality of how the Western world has really treated our countries, or viewed our countries, or deemed poorly our country? So our countries are, our roots are where we come from. So let's start there with more mindfulness on that. That's it. I am going to end this video. I know it's super long. I know there's naturally a lot of controversial things, and naturally I feel like I've gained inner courage, strength, and pride in the fact that, I would say I do find that when all is said and done, I think for myself, I don't want anyone and anything to dictate how I think or how I view the world and how I see things, because I feel like the greatest testament of all that one says is more experience, as a lot of times experience, or supported by experience, and without a doubt I've seen the inequality. I'm glad and I'm thankful that many of you naturally have found my conversations enlightening or can relate to my conversations. And yeah, this is what I'm often, I often feel passionate and compelled to talk about. Uh, I can't change circumstances or situations of the world or how, perhaps I'm perceived or viewed. But I guess I can change my response, or I can find individuals that understand that journey, that walk. And I find that those are you that are, are like, yeah, that I've experienced the same. I've felt the same. I've seen the same. Thank you so much for existing. Thank you so much for, I feel like you have so much power in your hands, and I encourage you to speak out and be proud of who you are, and even with all the things that come with our journey and our experiences. I feel like it's provided me the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to be able to understand and see the intricacies of those things. I feel like, not a lot of people, because they don't experience that, they could care less. They could care less. If it doesn't impact them, they could care less. And, that's not me and it's not for me to inform them, which is interesting. I had a specialist within the healthcare. I had shared with her a frustrating experience. This was a while back ago, dealing with this individual, this old man. I don't know. To me, at face value, he looked rather privileged. He seemed. Not surprisingly, it was, and this is happening also in New York City. Gentrification, insane amount of gentrification, but it was in gentrified area. Well, DC is becoming gentrified, but there we go. I gave you the location, the place in which it occurred. I told her about the experience I encountered, and then she was like, your duty is not to educate, or you don't have to feel responsible to educate anyone, because if you educate everyone, or you take the time to educate everyone, or if you take that upon yourself, you're going to exhaust yourself. So just know that you don't have to educate anyone. When I see and experience things, I'm just like, that is a reality, and that is a state of where they're at here, and here, or heart, the heart, right? And that's not, I can't change that. That's a internal thing. They have to work within themselves, and they have to come to realize, like, whether that is conscious or subconscious, biases that they have, stereotypes, their perceptions of the world and different communities and people. That's for them to tackle, not me. But what I can do is speak on my experiences and have this, outlet as a way to also provide some level of healing for myself. And it's interesting because I was also thinking to myself while I was just like, I'm going to hop on here. You know what? It's been a minute. I said to myself, like, this could be like the diary of me, right? Diary of me. Yeah. So that's it. I wish I could spend more time with y'all, and I wish I could actually have interactions with those that have had similar experiences, and we can have conversations. And I think that's one thing that I'm big about. I'm not someone that is going to be online or looking at like things, responses, and whatnot. I find that there's always going to be a lot of trolls. There's always going to be a lot of people that don't agree, and that's everyone's right. It's, I guess that's another thing that America clearly doesn't have right, is that people have the right to speak as they please and say as they please. And I guess some people will say, well, then that means I can be racist or on. Well, then that, when all is said and done, I can respond, right? So, it's crazy that entitled people, that their ancestors colonized this land, managed to make everyone feel like the other, or foreigners, think that they are the only ones that have the right. That's how you know there's privilege. But most importantly, that's how you know that America is not the land of the free and is not the home of the brave. Because brave people don't bully. Don't bully countries. People are just merely trying to survive. No. Brave people don't even have to bully other people just because they're another color, different religion. No. Yeah. That just gives you insight on what we got here, what we got in the world. A lot of troubled, broken people that want to take out their brokenness on individuals that are easier, as they see it, targets, lesser group. It's interesting also how, since they're the majority at this point, they managed historically to kill, eliminate, not provide the same access to care, healthcare more. Well, yeah, I mean, how did they become the majority? And not to add, they brought all their illnesses and diseases and more, and did the craziest of things historically, and hence we are here. The majority are no longer what once was. Yeah. So yeah, it's something to consider, to remember, to realize. And yeah, I just hope that all of you can feel empowered to speak up. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I wish I could stay with you guys for longer. I really enjoy having conversations. I haven't hopped on live because there's a lot of always comments, and I'm just this is very distracting. Naturally, I can turn comments off, but I don't really care to do that because I want people to engage. And I feel like when people of different perspectives interact in conversations, they're able to grow and challenge their own ideas and beliefs. So for me, it's always a win, despite whatever it may be negative, right? When things are online, when comments, if they're online and they're negative, and the reason being is because not only are certain people showing their true face and the reality of, well, here is a sheer example of racism, but not only that, other people that are opposing racism can inform them better or help enlighten them. I find that a lot of the issues that exist is because people haven't taken the time to get to know other people, and they've managed to just villainize them. I find that perhaps this is one of the reasons why people do pander to colonizations and to whiteness, is that they see it so much. It's in their face. It's constantly being sold. Everyone that's being represented or put out there is white, and you have no other option but to be like, oh yeah, well, I see them in this and that and that, and they're everywhere, but you don't see the same for any other community, and therefore you start to normalize in your mind, well, they're the ones, you start to make association, oh, they're the ones that are excelling. And then because now, well, racists and these ideas that racists have tried to put forth stereotypes, negative stereotypes. Oh, these communities are X, Y, and Z. See, that's an example. That's an example. Mind you, they've done so much evil historically, but they want to sweep that under the rug, and they continue to do so much evil currently, and they want to continue to sweep that under the rug by giving you positive representations of themselves. But with communities of color, oh no, like, because there's hardly any of them, that means like, they're not at the same level, or if they no. If we really look at history, if we really look at what has happened prior, to, like, I watch a lot of movies from the 20th century, golden age, sure. I mean, like, I grew up and I enjoyed many of those films, and I still watch a lot of those films, but the imbalance, the fact that not long ago I was watching a movie and I saw that they had on the newspaper that they showed, it was like white female, X, Y, and Z, and it's just like, yeah, so if you're not allowing certain communities to work or earn money, what do you expect from them? Please enlighten me. What do you expect from them when you want to make it only accessible to your community? And this might be the reason why DEI exists, or one of the many reasons why DEI exists, and just one example, because I'm sure there's a lot more reasoning, but you expect me to believe that your community has gotten to where it's at because of merit, or because of, like, intelligence, or whatever you're trying to tell me, that is clearly a lie. Because if we look at history, you have been the only ones, and it's, as it would be, and this is only the racial aspect of it. Naturally, there's the gender aspect of it, and beyond. But and I've been reading books on more so like science. I need to get a refresher on all of that. But all of these scientists that have existed have been men, and I'm just like thinking to myself, man, I love to learn. I love to, submerge myself in experiences where allow me to garner more knowledge. And then I was just like, but all these scientists, I mean, were men, so like, were there any women working with them? Were women not allowed to like be in their spaces? And I would be like, I'm sorry, I'm putting on a mustache, I'm gonna cut my hair short during that time. I mean, I'm fairly skinny, so I probably pass. But it's not like they're gonna let me in the room anyway, given the fact that I am not white. But it was just like something that came to mind. I'm just like, wow, like, the limitations that have existed is insane. Sure, that's what you want to believe in terms of you gaining things through merit, through intelligence. Knock yourself out. But the reality of it is that people of color have had to work 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times more than you. Yes. And it's and I guess I'll give you an example. I've always been like, I'm like, I wish I could just do learning for the rest of my life, right? Or I could just do that for work, learning, and just like, and naturally there is ways to do that. They say, oh, just work in academia or higher education. But as someone that is immigrant, and I've noticed this with a lot of my also women of color counterparts. And I had this conversation once upon a time with my childhood best friend. We were talking about how we felt a lot more pressure to go further in terms when it concerned school compared to our brothers. And it's crazy because, well, that's exactly what we did technically. And it's just like, it's not only ingrained in other cultures that, obviously immigrant cultures, that when you come here, like, oh, you gotta do this and that, you have to be like the best. But why do we have to be the best when white people are just mediocre. Like, seriously, seriously. And I guess another example, because I might as well share this. When I was in the military, I noticed, and mind you, I was like one of the few women of color. Not only do they have very, very few women in the Coast Guard, because Coast Guard is the second least diverse, I believe, and branch has the least women as well. So, and my experiences with some of the white women that were there were just horrific. Whew, Lord, the patience I've had to gain throughout my life. And this might sound extremely controversial, but I feel like a lot of women are always hating on a lot of women of color. I'm going to keep it real. They've always I feel like and maybe this is you find this a lot. Well, I feel like this is human nature in general, but like, I don't know. I feel like within women, amongst women, there's always this, beauty and all this stuff. But it's just like, I feel because of that, and perhaps it's like there's a sense of competition, and you always have to. I don't know. For me, it's just like I don't have to put, in my opinion, I don't have to put someone down because of their race. And then just some things I've noticed when navigating spaces with white or white adjacent women, where it's just like I've noticed that they they like to throw jabs. They try to make it seem like they're the good guy, when often, and in my opinion, they're not. They're just really and it's interesting how, in this case, in many cases, I'll notice how men of color will just like, oh yeah, like automatically you're the one doing the wrong. I'm just keeping it real. Like, as a woman of, like, if and when it's something that is happening with a white woman, it just so happens to be that you're the problem. You know what? I'm not going to question that happens within white men and white men and men of color, because my brother has had a lot of experiences with white men trying to question his nationality, which is technically what happened today at my visit. But yeah, so in reality, that's the truth, and that's something I've noticed. Like, in the Coast Guard, that is what I was saying. In the Coast Guard, I saw a lot of individuals just so happened to be POCs, were always put in ramp and probation. Mind you, I remember reading an article in the past. It was regarding the Marine Corps, and there was mentions of this individual. I think it was South Asian origins. I think he was hazed, and he experienced discrimination, and it was mentioned in the article. And interestingly enough, I spoke to one of my colleagues, which was from Puerto Rico, during my time also at the Coast Guard, and he was, born and raised there, and a lot of individuals from Puerto Rico seemed to, join the military, and he was one of the many. And, we were having a conversation. He said that because he was speaking Spanish, he said, one of the company commanders said, learn English. Honey, this Puerto Rican gentleman right here is putting in time and effort to protect a country. Yeah, I don't believe in all this military BS narrative, but I'm gonna say it. Like, we're protecting, and Coast Guard has a more ethical, more or less, approach, so I can respect that. But he's taking the time and effort to protect a country that benefits you. Yes, white man. Yes. And white women, yes. And you are insulting the fact that he knows 2 languages while you probably only know one. And you talk about, and a lot of people that are pro-military, thank you for your service. Well, how about thanking people for their service by being respectful, by being mindful of the fact that although they might be from another country, they choose to protect this country that has a lot of problems at the core. Despite all of that, they choose to protect. Despite the discrimination they go through, despite the problems they have to undergo, they choose to protect your country. Yeah, the country that was colonized and benefits white people. Yes. So, yeah, I'm mind blown. But, the things I notice is just like, you speak the truth, they like to silence you. You speak the truth, you speak against whatever narrative that is in place. Like, I was looking at a short clip of what, I don't know what, it's a new film by like a Palestinian and Israeli director, from what I understand. I don't remember the name. You guys might know. I've seen one of the Palestinians documentaries on Netflix. Oh man, I was crying. But then I also saw the one of the, it's not related to the Palestine, but it was the one of the black women in the battalion in the army. Oh my gosh, I was crying. I was so upset. It's like people people that are literally sacrificing their lives for a country that doesn't even support them, and getting that type of treatment is outrageous, ridiculous. This is why many people of color and many communities in general, like even the white communities, like no more of that conservatism, no more of that, only the white community can profit and benefit from BS. Because this was not a white country, predominantly white country from the get-go to begin with. And this is a colonized country, and let's see it as it is. So, yeah, so I remember seeing that, like when they were giving them the awards, and a lot of people just sitting down. A lot of people, yeah. It's just like people can't get out of their sheer arrogance, their sheer selfishness, their egocentrism character to just appreciate the fact that someone's trying to fight for their own freedoms, for their own rights. But it's more of like, you don't deserve those freedoms. That's what I'm saying. Like, we need to break free of colonization as a whole, as people of color, because it's never benefited our communities, and it will not continue to benefit our communities. As we can see, Palestine is a sheer example of what exactly colonization is. And I urge also the Arab world to really, we really need to come together as communities of color. And it's not only of like only Arab unity, but it's Latin American, East Asian, African. And we need to stop with the colorism. The colorism is an extension of racism, is an extension of, I still worship the white woman and man. If we truly don't believe in what they're selling, if we truly say, oh, free Palestine, if we truly say, I support Sudan, I support all of these communities of color, I am not against civilization of countries beyond the U.S., then let's really stand 10 toes down by also supporting our black and brown brothers and sisters. That's a hard thing, because it's like, it seems like it's a hard thing for some communities of color to do. It's like they're so enwrapped in this whiteness, like white is right belief. It's just like you can't see beyond that. You can't see how detrimental that is to you and how that is a disservice to you. It's amazing, but I feel like you have to experience it. You have to live it, and some of the individuals will never experience or live it because they're not in states or in places where, who knows, maybe they have a bit of privilege. And that's another thing. We have to acknowledge our own privilege. If we do say we are humans, if we do say we are for humanity, if we do say we are for people, then that should be we are for people as a whole. We are for all of the world and for everyone to come into same treatment, equal treatment, and there shouldn't be differentiations made. All this comparing, contrasting, I feel like a lot of it really is, it stems from the Western world, making comparisons with skin tone, making comparisons with religion, with ideas, beliefs, political, groups. It's just like, if you're not with me, then you're against me. No, I have my own mind. I have my own brain. I can think for myself. I can reason for myself. I have self-awareness. I have empathy. I have compassion. And I have humanity. And if you're missing on that, or you're missing out on that, then I urge you to really look within you and see where your standards stand, or where your morality, ethicality, which is what a lot of the Western world likes to preach, and where you stand as a human being. Because it could be you next, and then you want people to have compassion for you when you could be next. Like they said on the comment section, your freedoms can be on the chopping block. Yeah, and white people are all of a sudden afraid. My freedoms are being, You've been robbing us of our freedoms since the beginning of time. You've replaced our communities since the beginning of time. So if you feel uncomfortable now, maybe you should have realized how detrimental, and not saying that you were back then in history, but for you to continue to be complacent or okay with that, you're being an ally to that. And that also leads me to talk about, for a bit, just before I end this, although it's not really significant or really important, but it's crazy how, and this is very minute. I mean, if I really don't encourage people to rely or look at, famous individuals or being within this realm. Like, there's a lot of issues that exist, and being occupied with things that concern, wealthy people, celebrities, things of that nature, really takes up our time to really leverage humanity. So this is more of like just random, like just something I observed that also has to do with colonization, has to do with the hypocrisy of this country and the Western world. But as you know, there's been women of color being represented, for example, Little Mermaid with Haley, and Rachel for Snow White. Seems to me a lot of people have a lot to say about that. And it's crazy that I see a lot of women of color, which is why I say, let's take a moment to dismantle colonization within us. Are we aware, and perhaps this is a generation that is not too aware of what happened historically, but as mentioned earlier in this video, I did say that I watched a lot of classic movies, or growing up, that's what my parents, since they are very faith-based and they were very strict on what one could watch, and maybe at some point, and I think I covered to some degree my thoughts on Christianity, but I guess I could always revisit that, and that journey and that experience growing up. And my parents converted to Pentecostal faith. So yeah, I grew up in if you know about religion, or you've informed yourself of religion to some degree, or Christianity, or whatever it is, I've always been a big fan of Abrahamic faiths in terms of learning about them. Very interesting to see three major religions, and to see also it's such a divide. It's just like why can't we come together? It seems like there's always so much contention. It's just like, wow, like when we think about, if we think about God and we think about if he's good, if he's love, if he's kindness, if he's grace, if he's all these things, why is there all this division, all this hate towards one another? I mean, are we reading the book, or are we just trying to be better than the other? Once again, compare and contrast, constant. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a direct result of what has existed here in the West with colonization and whatnot, and how that's impacted the world. A lot of compare and contrast. So this is right, this is not. But yeah, what was I gonna say? Because I feel like sometimes I lose my train of thought. Let's see. And I feel like I forgot for the first time today. I think this has been a long enough video. It's 2 hours, almost 2 hours. I can't believe I've spoken this much. What is that individual that spoke at the Senate? I feel like maybe I'm channeling the energy. Oh right, yes, I remember now, because it has to do with media. But it's crazy how people are coming at Rachel, and I've also come for Haley, I don't know how to pronounce her name. I'm sorry. You're gorgeous, girl. I don't know. I know it's a simple name. Sorry, girl. Supporting you. I should watch the film that you did. But yeah, I notice a lot of backlash with women of color. Do I hear haters? Do I hear haters? Oh yes, I've been hearing haters since the beginning of time. I mean, like, that is essentially what I feel like part of the reason why perhaps colonization even existed, intimidation of other groups, of the possibility of these other groups probably be better. And so yeah, with that being said, so it's crazy that kind of response has occurred when golden age. We're gonna have to find a new name for that one. That is gonna. But the 20th century, 1940s, around that era. Even I think it was. I definitely saw. I mean, like, I've seen the Ten Commandments. If you've seen it with Charles Heston, and what was the other one? Ten Commandments was that one, and Ben-Hur. Yeah, there was definitely the use of color on white individuals. I would say even borderline. Like, I was just like, they were doing blackface back in the past, and some people might argue that was the past. They were doing that because they didn't want to probably hire, pay, have these very communities represented. So why are you arguing about modern time that is trying to represent an individual that, one, Disney has also catered, I mean, most of the world has catered to Eurocentrism. How much representation do you need, Europeans? Seriously. White folks, how much representation? Do you need all, like, TV time? Like, seriously, I'm just appalled by the fact that you don't even allow, like, this is a response with other individuals, too, that like to pander to colonization. Oh, but make it right. Make it accurate. Then make that right. Make it accurate. Take down those movies. Take down those shows or whatever they were. All that energy when it concerns communities of color, but none of that energy when it concerns white people. Makes no sense, but makes sense, because literally people love to pander to white people, love to kiss white ass, but don't have any self-respect and dignity to oppose things, beliefs, ideas that are not for them. And obviously white people are always going to support their own communities, so I mean, that's the expected. They're always going to be about them and their own people. That's been them since the beginning of time. So to me, it's like I need to support my, fellow brothers and sisters. And I recommend that you support your fellow brothers and sisters if you're a POC as well, because judging off history, that support has never come from those that have colonized the USA and continue to try to colonize the entire world. So I'll see you guys. Bye. Take care.